This is QTV News coming to you from our studios on Caraba Avenue. I am Umudu Gajaga and thanks for joining us. Here are the main news headlines. An international symposium on climate change adaptation in Africa was organized on Thursday by the University of the Gambia in collaboration with Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany. A three-day capacity building forum on disaster risk management for 30 stakeholders and the regional disaster risk committees was organized on Tuesday by the NDMA and the humanitarian agency Catholic Relief Services. As the Ministry of Health rolled out another nationwide COVID-19 vaccination campaign, Jibril Gando Balde, the ministry's senior health communication officer, has spoken about the significance and benefits of the vaccine. At the Forum for the Development of National Language Policy, the former National Assembly member for Woolly West, Sidia Jatta, has called on Gambia to galvanize efforts towards formalizing the use of local languages to preserve our African identity. And in international news, two of the last known living survivors of the 1921 racially motivated massacre in Tulsa in the United States of America have been granted Ghanaian citizenship. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. Welcome and thank you for joining us. This is QTV News. The 5th International Symposium on Climate Change Adaptation in Africa was organized on Thursday by the University of the Gambia in collaboration with Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany. Loli M. Camara attended the event and filed this report.
Climate adaptation protects people and places by making them less vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Some of the examples include to protect against sea level rise and increased flooding. From July of last year, many parts of the country have experienced heavy rains, leading to serious flooding. Thus, tackling challenges of climate change issues in the country is crucial. Professor Herbert Robinson, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the Gambia, spoke about the important roles played by African universities as centers of research and teaching, adding that strengthening the research infrastructure and building capacities of young and upcoming climate scientists and tackling the challenges of climate change.
There is a need for evidence-based research to ensure a better understanding of how climate change can affect African countries, and for the identification of processes, methods, and tools which may help African countries to better adapt to these impacts.
Professor Walter Lied, the chairperson of Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany, stated that Africa has rich environmental and human resources, but their utilization remains a challenge.
We would like to tackle in this event the pressing need to identify a way to handle climate change, to avoid its many socio-economic impacts, to avoid the traps climate change sets on us, such as the poverty trap, and find ways to address it.
Per Gomez, Minister of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, says Africa is one of the most vulnerable continents to climate change impact, as reported in the 6th Assessment Report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change.
Climate change is expected to have widespread impact on African societies and Africans' interaction with the natural environment. There are also signs that the impacts of climate change are already being felt across all sectors, including education, agriculture, with lower crop yields, and the availability of water resources, among others. And UTG, through this program, has produced research that demonstrate this reality, especially within the North Bank and other areas.
The symposium brought together members of the West African Science Service Center on Climate Change and Adapted Land Use, UTG chapter, and other stakeholders. Members will also discuss ways that African universities can support building capacities for resilience in African countries. For QTV News, Lolly M. Kamal.
The National Disaster Management Agency, in collaboration with the humanitarian agency Catholic Relief Services, commenced a 3-day capacity building forum on Tuesday on disaster risk management for 30 stakeholders and the regional disaster risk committees. Julden Jai reports.
The aim of this forum is to equip participants with the knowledge and skills required to effectively manage disasters. Last year's rainy season caused extensive flash flooding that cost lives and destroyed the livelihoods of thousands of people in the Gambia, prompting the government to roll out measures to mitigate such disasters. Sana Dahaba, Executive Director of the National Disaster Management Agency, says the capacity to assess and analyze possible disaster threats is a prerequisite for decision-making and effective action in disaster risk management.
Even practical early warning will not ensure successful preventive action unless there is a fundamental change of attitude towards disaster perception. As integrated approach that brings together the efforts of the government, UN agencies, NGOs, civil society, local authorities, and local community is the most viable, effective, and sustainable disaster management strategy.
Mr. Dahaba further spoke about enhancing the capacities of local authorities, especially in expanding disaster risk reduction at grassroots level.
This expected outcome gave credence to your involvement so that in your role as disaster workers, you would give a voice to those without and to serve as an enabler for the marginalized population who should be at the heart of the process.
A situational report by the National Disaster Management Agency revealed the shocking details of the level of devastation across the country caused by the flash floods. The urban area, particularly the West Coast region, the Kanifing municipality and Banjul were the hardest hit. Usman Bojang is the governor of West Coast region.
I want to urge all participants to take the training very, very seriously, tap into the opportunities that we have here, and share lessons learned with colleagues who are not privileged to attend. The skills learned should be applied in your various regions, working closely with communities especially to reduce vulnerability and disaster risk.
The United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction has supported the Gambia to implement various key activities such as risk profiling, which provides a comprehensive view of hazards, risks and uncertainties for flash and droughts in a changing climate. With unpredictable weather patterns and after the 2022 heavy winds accompanied by flash floods causing at least 11 deaths, this training can be seen as a step forward in preparation for the 2023 rainy season, which is about 4 months away. For QTV News, I am Julden Jai.
As the Ministry of Health rolled out round 9 of the nationwide COVID-19 vaccination campaign on Monday, March 1st, Jibril Gando Balde, the ministry's senior health communication officer, has spoken about the significance of the vaccine, especially for the elderly and people with pre-existing conditions. Lena E. Igwenyiba has more.
The countrywide vaccination campaign is to scale up vaccination by bringing the vaccines closer to the people in their communities, thereby creating the much-needed herd immunity to further protect the country from new variants. Currently, only about 18% of the country's population is fully vaccinated, a far cry from the goal to get at least 70% of the population vaccinated. Jibril Gandabalde underscores the significance of the nationwide campaign.
COVID is not over, though it has drastically declined, reduced in number of cases, hospitalization and eventually deaths, but it's still around the world, and Gambia is not an exception to that. So there is a need to create a population of the Gambia that will be vaccinated to protect, further devastation due to the virus.
The vaccines will be administered not only at fixed sites such as health centers and hospitals, but also in communities. Mr. Balde outlines the steps taken by the ministry to combat vaccine hesitancy and misinformation.
We have engaged with almost all the chiefs in this country, area councils, governors. We have trained all these people, oriented them up to the National Assembly level, and going down also. We also met with like civil society organizations recently. Just day before yesterday, we had an engagement with civil society organizations. We also have engagement with our local traditional communicators. These are Kanyalengs, or village support groups, who are always on the ground, directly dealing with these communities in a day-to-day activity.
Mr. Balde further urged vulnerable groups like the elderly, meaning those that are 65 years and above, those with pre-existing conditions, and individuals aged 12 years and above to take the vaccine.
We are appealing to the people, especially those who are ranked as high-risk groups. These are people who are having diabetes, who are having cancer, who are having asthma, who are having high blood pressure. So if you are part of this group, we appeal to you, please go out and take your vaccine, because we have realized that only 2.5% of that number of people who are having these diseases are vaccinated. Every school-going child who is 12 years and above is part of this campaign. And then we are working with MOPSI, that is Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, to facilitate for schools to allow our teams access in their schools, and also to inform parents before our arrival, so that parents can give consent for their kids to get protected.
It is essential to note that COVID-19 vaccines are provided free of charge and have been proven safe and effective to protect the vaccinated and their families against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Reporting for QTV News, I am Lena E. Gwenyiba.
That report by Lena E. Gwenyiba takes us to a commercial break, and when we return, we still have some more local and international news stories. Do stay tuned.
Modu came in to buy some bathroom floor tile, but once he laid eyes on our basins, he fell in love with a stunning basin and with a breathtaking faucet. With a brand new mirror too, at a bargaining price.
So, I got a bathtub too.
Oh yes, he picked up a bathtub too.
And yes, that's Bettymat's Betty Days. Take advantage of exceptional discounts up to 60% on tiles, sanitary, electrical, and lighting. From March 4th to 18th, you will be splurging. Bettymat, welcome home.
Alhaji Siddiq Labo, ntenga vaccination otale. Adumba alfana yamarale vaccination ota men sintanka na banko kan ayen so jati ken leala.
Welcome back, and thank you very much if you're just joining us. This is QTV News. The former National Assembly member for Woolly West, Sidia Jatta, has called on Gambia to galvanize efforts towards the formalization of the use of local languages to preserve our African identity. He was speaking at the opening of the workshop for the development of national language policy. More in this report.
Widely known and respected for his relentless advocacy for formalization of the use of local languages, Honorable Sidia Jatta has been a staunch advocate for the preservation of African culture and heritage. A linguist himself, Mr. Jatta has for decades been at the forefront of the campaign to institutionalize learning and speaking of local languages in schools and all gatherings across the country. At a workshop for the development of the country's first ever national language policy, the renowned politician challenges participants, especially central government through MOPSI and MOHAS, to ensure that once completed, the policy is functional and effective. He says it is a duty upon everyone to accelerate efforts to formalize the use of our national languages.
Politically, we say we are independent, but economically, we are not. But even more so, culturally, we are still enslaved. Because the tongue that I'm using here is an alien tongue. The reason why this hole is not filled is simply because I'm using an alien tone, which is alien to the vast majority of people in this country. And therefore they could not come here. And this is their meeting. This is where they matter. Because we are talking about our identity.
The Minister for Tourism and Culture, Hamad Nkeba, also a long-time staunch local language advocate, and Professor Sami Beban Chumbo, President of the Assembly of Academians, both say this initiative to develop a policy on local languages is long overdue. However, they recognize the importance of this initiative by government and also called for collective support to ensure it becomes a reality.
In our daily acting, our daily behavior, generally, even at the level of schools, I think government have left out a very important element in this process. And that's why when we came into office, I felt it was important to work with these groups, these languages, to bring them back. And I'm happy now we're even starting to, yes, make sure that they are taught in schools. And we support them.
I would like to thank the government of the Gambia for the initiative in working with us and accepting to work with us on this issue, which is very, very close to our hearts. The need for us to have countries that have a language policy that is centered on the use of the languages of the people in partnership with the official languages for the development of our people.
The convergence brought together language experts, academics, journalists, and musicians who are expected to design a workable plan of action for the implementation of the policy. In recognition of the importance of language, the United Nations has designated 21st February annually as Mother Language Day. The theme of the 2023 International Mother Language Day, multilingual education, a necessity to transform education, aligns with recommendations made during the Transforming Education Summit, where an emphasis was also placed on indigenous peoples' education and languages. Language is one of the most important parts of any culture. It is the way by which people communicate with one another, build relationships, and create a sense of community. And language also plays a vital role in ensuring the continuity and transmission of cultural norms that protect one's identity and cultural dignity. Answane Sonyase for QTV News.
The Gambia College School of Nursing and Midwifery conducted a sensitization program on Thursday, employing psychodrama to highlight various psychiatric conditions aimed at preventing discrimination and stigmatization of psychiatric patients. Jennifer Sonko was in attendance and Sina reports.
The program was organized by the students of the 2021 psychiatric model intake after weeks of theory and practical experience in different psychiatric units. The psychodrama is in partial academic fulfillment of Module 7 in the School of Nursing and Midwifery. Students are assessed on the symptoms, causes of mental disorders, factors and treatment they manifest. This type of therapy incorporates aspects of role play, dramatic self-presentation, and group dynamics to help people gain greater understanding and insight into their lives and experiences. Psychodrama may help people walk through painful emotions, understand another person's perspective, and resolve trauma. Fatuba is the principal of the School of Nursing and Midwifery.
At the Gambia College School of Nursing and Midwifery, we do ensure that students learn, but in as much as they are learning, we expose them to different ways of learning. And this psychodrama is one of the ways in which they would manifest some of the learning that has taken place during the course of this model. It is important also for us to understand that here at the Gambia College School of Nursing and Midwifery, we do train nurses and midwives to have the knowledge, skills, and attitude in order to be able to answer to the need and deliver the services that are required by the population.
It is estimated that about 120,000 of the Gambian population are affected by mental illness, but 90% of these people do not have access to mental health services. Lamarana Ba, the psychiatric course coordinator, says he's impressed by the performance of his students.
At the moment, there are many risk factors to mental illness at this particular time, ranging from migration migration, that is the movement of people from one country to the other, and also the associated risk factors such as traumas, like physical traumas, and even psychological traumas that may arise as a result of many situations. Example, GVB, gender-based violence, and then migration, as I said before. You also have physical traumas. Yes, so people who have already underwent this type of situation, they may develop PTSD. So when people develop PTSD or other psychotic symptoms, they need support to get back to their house.
Different mental health issues were showcased, including visual hallucination, which involves seeing things that are in there. Also depression, which negatively affects how you feel, the way you think, and how you act. Also hyperreactivity, where a person may seem to move about constantly. Bukari Sise is part of the students participating in the psychodrama.
We are doing this drama to educate people about the misuse of drugs and to encourage people not to discriminate people who are having this mental problem, you know. So we are trying our best.
In the Gambia, Tanka Tanka is the only mental health psychiatric treatment center. It was built in 2009 by a Dutch non-governmental organization. Apart from a lack of adequate facilities, wrong perceptions about mental health remains a major challenge. This activity by the School of Nursing and Midwifery will contribute to changing people's mindsets. Reporting for QTV News, I am Jainab Sonko.
Now, coming up next is international news. Two of the three last known living survivors of the 1921 racially motivated massacre in Tulsa in the United States of America have been granted Ghanaian citizenship. Mohammed Balde tells us more.
On Tuesday, the ceremony held at the Ghanaian Embassy in Washington, Viola Ford Fletcher and her brother Hugh Van Ellis, two of the three last living survivors of the 1921 Tulsa massacre, were granted Ghanaian citizenship. On a trip to Ghana in 2021, they were given royal titles and granted an audience with President Nana Akufo-Addo. Fletcher was crowned a queen mother and named Na Lameli, meaning a strong person who stands the test of time, while her younger brother Ellis was crowned a chief and called Bayo Lanti. The siblings are 108 and 102 in age respectively, making them the oldest African Americans to be granted Ghanaian citizenship. The Tulsa Massacre, also known as the Black Wall Street Massacre, was a two-day-long massacre that took place between the evening of May 31st and June 1st, 1921, in the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The massacre began after a 19-year-old black shoeshiner named Dick Rowland was arrested for the alleged assault of Sarah Page, a white 17-year-old elevator operator. Rumors that he was to be lynched quickly spread throughout the city and prompted a mob of hundreds of white men to gather at the jail where he was being held. News of the white mob's presence at the jail quickly traveled around the city, and a group of 75 black men, some armed, arrived at the jail to protect Rowland. The black group were persuaded by the sheriff to leave with the promise that he had the situation under control. A gunfight broke out as the black group departed when one of the white men attempted to forcefully disarm a black man. 12 people died in the ensuing violence, 10 white and 2 black. The white mob then ran to the affluent black neighborhood of Greenwood, which had been dubbed Black Wall Street due to its large number of successful black-owned businesses and affluent residents. On that fateful night, the rage-filled, racist white mob, armed with explosives, guns, and other ambush-style weapons, descended upon Greenwood, burning down houses and businesses and shooting any black person in their path. Reports estimate that about 300 people were killed and the number of injured was in the thousands. About 10,000 black people were left homeless, and the cost of the property damage amounted to more than $1.5 million in real estate and $750,000 in personal property, equivalent to $34.18 million in today's money. The massacre is widely regarded as one of the worst episodes of racial violence in United States history. The systematic racism at play was also apparent, as even though many of the homes of the Greenwood residents were rebuilt, real estate companies in the city of Tulsa refused to compensate the victims. The events of the night were also omitted from local, state, and national media for years. Viola Fletcher, who was just 7 years old at the time, was asleep in bed when she was awoken by her mother and told that the family had to flee. Her brother Hugh was just a newborn baby and had no idea how the events of that night would change his life forever. The siblings brought a lawsuit against the city of Tulsa in 2021 for profiting off the names of the massacre victims, and as of last August, a judge ruled that proceedings on the case can officially move forward. The same judge, however, ruled that descendants of victims of the race riot cannot sue the authorities. It is important to note that despite the outcome of the lawsuit, nothing can correct or atone for the atrocities endured by Greenwood residents. For QTV News, I am Mohammed Balde.
Before we end this bulletin, here is a recap of our news headlines. An international symposium on climate change adaptation in Africa was organized on Thursday by the University of the Gambia in collaboration with Hamburg University of Applied Sciences in Germany. A three-day capacity building forum on disaster risk management for 30 stakeholders and the regional disaster risk committees was organized on Tuesday by the NDMA and the humanitarian agency Catholic Relief Services. As the Ministry of Health rolled out another nationwide COVID-19 vaccination campaign, Jibril Gando Balde, the ministry's senior health communication officer, has spoken about the significance and benefits of the vaccine. At the Forum for the Development of a National Language Policy, the former National Assembly member for Woolly West, Sidi Ajata, has called on Gambia to galvanize efforts towards the formalization of the use of local language to preserve our African identity. And in international news, two of the last known living survivors of the 1921 racially motivated massacre in Tulsa in the United States of America have been granted Ghanaian citizenship. That's all in this edition of the news. Thank you very much for watching. Join us again at 10 for another bulletin.